Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the California Coastal Commission. Can we call the roll, please?
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Commissioner Groom.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Here.
Commissioner Luevano.
Here.
Commissioner Padilla.
Present.
Commissioner Mann.
Here.
Commissioner Uranga. Chair Bochco.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. And as I understand, there's no agenda changes.
That is correct. No
How
agenda
ordered.
changes today. I would just remind everyone in the audience that if you do have any cell phones or electronic devices, that you put them into quiet mode for today's meeting. And so with that, I'll turn the mic back over to you, Chair Bochco.
Okay. We will start with our general public comment. We seem to have a few slips here. Everyone should come forward when your name is called. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. And please state your name before speaking. I'll start with Todd Cardiff.
Morning, Honorable Coastal Commissioners and Chair Bochco. My name is Todd Cardiff. I'm the attorney for Grassroots Coalition, and I'm here for the same purpose that I was here on Wednesday. Just a quick reminder, on Wednesday we discussed the CDP to remove the illegal drains in the Biona wetlands. What I wanted to discuss today was evidence that, in fact, the Coastal Commission was very clear in their directions and what they voted on back in December of 2017, that it was to remove the illegal drains in the Biona wetlands. So first of all, one of the things that Executive Director Ainsworth talked about, he said, I think our intent with this CDP was to allow removal or abandonment in place. And the problem with that statement is, what is our intent? Does the intent of staff or Executive Director Ainsworth override the intent of the Coastal Commission? And no, it doesn't. It's the only intent that matters is the intent of the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission was very clear. Both Peskin, Commissioner Peskin and Brownsy, were very adamant that abandonment in place for those illegal drains was not acceptable to them, and they would not vote for the recommendation in the staff report. So staff changed that, and unfortunately we don't have time to show what Chris Peterson read to the Coastal Commission on that day, but twice, Chris Peterson, when asked to clarify exactly what the Coastal Commission is voting on, he read and he said, remove the drains, within 180 days after action on the application to remove the drains. And it wasn't remove or abandonment. That was what was in the original staff report. And then there was a unanimous vote. So if there was a unanimous vote for approval on the change in the staff report, and both Peskin and Brownsy specifically said, I object to abandonment in place, then you know it's remove the drains. So this isn't something that needs to be addressed today. It's not an action that needs to be taken by the Coastal Commission. What the Coastal Commission needs to do is just correct that CDP. The final thing I want to say is that we're going to be providing you a transcript so that you can look on your own on what was said on that day.
Thank you.
Claire.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair
Pam-
Bochco, I'm sorry, could I make a quick comment?
Yes, you may, Commissioner
And
Howell.
I'll be quick, I promise. So just, I think it's important that members of the public know, and Mr. Cardiff, you used the term discussion when you referenced what you said at public comment on Wednesday. At public comment, the commission isn't allowed to respond. We're not allowed to discuss items that are brought up to the public because they're not on the agenda. I think that Grassroots or the Biona was going to be part of Mr. Hudson's deputy director's report when we could have had a conversation. So we can't discuss it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Pamela Moffett?
Hi. Hi. Oops, you can hear me. Hi, thank you so much for having me, allowing me to speak. Have recently moved to my name is Pamela Moffett. I have recently moved to California from New York, and I am absolutely in awe every day of how fantastic your beaches are and how wonderful the coastline is and what a great job you've done. I'm here to speak about the dog beach, and I have a dog, and it's very important that we protect endangered species, that we protect the coastline, and the endangered species habitat. What I would like to do is show you some pictures of the beach so you can, I don't know how many have actually seen this little dog beach, but it may help you make an assessment of how much it's endangering the wildlife. So, could we run this, please? It's on oceanfront, and the first picture that's the entrance to the beach, and then the next one is the entrance looking from the ocean, and then the little sliver on the right, that's the dog beach after the rocks. So the rocks are sort of makeshift breakwater. Where that water is, that's where the jetty comes when there is low tide. That's the river and the bridge. This is sort of a panorama of the dunes, the houses, close-up of the dunes, some more dunes, and then some tire tracks. And someone yesterday was talking about one of the threats to these birds is vehicles on the beach, and that they have found a dead bird actually in a tire track. So I think we need to assess everything. This may not be the perfect place for dogs, but it seems when I've been there that the dog is on a leash as they're going through. They're not close to the dunes. They're not off the leash until they're over on the side where the rocks are. So whether it's this place or someplace else in Newport that dogs are allowed to run free, hopefully you will make that decision. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sharon Fudge?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. Sharon Fudge from Laguna Beach. And yesterday was a long day. Mark and I, my husband, and I'm speaking for both of us today, we actually had a presentation that we decided not to show in respect for your time. And I'm not going to show it today either because it's sort of a reiteration of what's going on in Laguna Beach. But I will be following up with enforcement on more violations of the Coastal Act. It's important for you to know what an uphill battle we're facing in our city. Last night we were at our design review board meeting until almost midnight because there were a number of items on the agenda that would adversely affect the coast if they were approved as presented. And Mark actually met with the Director of Community Development earlier this week in an effort to say, what can we do? The city doesn't like all of these appeals. Your staff is taxed by these appeals. Mark and I spend a lot of time writing these appeals. But the Director of Community Development told Mark that they don't read the appeals. They don't read the staff reports from the Coastal Commission. So if they're not reading those, they're unable to make those corrections, even though we feel like we're beating the drum pretty hard. We go to the meetings and people ask us, don't you have anything better to do? And we really don't know that we do have anything better to do. This is important to us. We're very committed to protecting our coast. And once we fix Laguna Beach, we're going to move on and go up and down the coast when we see things. But that brings me to the real reason for why I want to make comment today. It's been a busy year. We want to thank everyone here. We want to thank staff, from the receptionists at the Long Beach office to the people that answer the phones to the people that staff the tables, to enforcement, the analysts, the media, the audiovisual to everybody up here and to you for helping us. And we're hoping that everybody takes a nice long break from all of this, enjoys the holidays, and is ready to come back in 2019 and make it a better year and make some really great decisions for Laguna Beach and California. So thank you for your time. Have a good holiday.
Thank you. Cindy Wingo?
Hi, Commissioners. I'm extremely nervous, so my husband told me to picture you with elf hats, so you guys look very festive
Well,
right
we're
now.
sitting under the dais, so that doesn't help.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm a Huntington Beach resident, but not on the managed retreat proposed area. I would like to speak about the California Coastal Commission Residential Adaptation Policy, the interpretive guidelines for addressing sea level rise in local coastal programs, specifically the managed retreat policy. I personally believe climate change is real. I personally believe that sea level is rising, and I don't envy the job that you have, and I know how hard it is when you're hearing from all sides of the equation. I would like to allow our organization and myself as well as a source for information and education regarding cause and effect for blanket deed restrictions referenced in the managed retreat guidelines. I'm a professional in mortgage lending. I've been in the mortgage industry since 1979. I've underwritten and sold loans to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, first-time home buyers, and jumbo loan products. Currently, I work for one of the top lenders in the nation, providing home lending for our consumers. I'm also the state co-chair for the government affairs for the California Association of Mortgage Professionals. The California Association of Mortgage Professionals' mission is to advocate on behalf of responsible mortgage professionals and consumers for the availability of affordable financing while promoting expert knowledge, accountability, sound lending, and ethical conduct throughout the mortgage industry. Our purpose in our industry is to serve as a forum for financial education and community outreach, legislative, and regulatory advocacy. Why are we concerned about managed retreat? More importantly, blanket deed restrictions. Our association would ask that you would be careful in doing blanket deed restrictions and not parcels by parcels. If you deem everything in the adaptation policy maps as managed retreat and required deed restrictions on all of these properties, we will be hurting private properties and city revenue by reducing home values and reducing income from the local tax base. Most lenders will not lend, and insurance companies will not insure on properties with deed restrictions. If lenders won't lend and insurance companies won't insure, it will affect the economy in the area. Not everyone in these affected areas are rich, and not everyone can pay cash for these properties. A lot of the homeowners are regular people who make great buying choices and want to leave their homes to their children. We know your job is difficult and important. We would like you to look at the unintended consequences of placing deed restrictions on properties that are not in the immediate danger area, but they may have problems in like 30 to 100 years. Once again, we would love just to be part of the conversation. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Can I put my pants back on? Kidding, I'm sorry. Oh, it's early. Daniel Kim?
Before we begin, I'd like to make sure you all have a handout that I distributed. It's this right here. This should be 13 pages. Yeah. All right. In that case,
Okay, go right ahead.
Chair Bochco, good morning. Honorable Commissioners, good morning. My name is Daniel Kim, and I am speaking on behalf of Aguirre and Severson, the law firm that filed a lawsuit after the Coastal Commission granted a permit to Southern California Edison to store nuclear waste 100 feet from the shore. As we're all aware, the San Onofre nuclear plant was shut down after a nuclear leak from failed steam generators. I'm here to inform you of the latest disaster at San Onofre. SoCal Edison, while they were moving radioactive waste into permanent storage, nearly dropped a canister full of spent nuclear waste. That canister would have dropped 18 feet onto the ground. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission investigated and found the following. and I'm now reading verbatim from the PowerPoint. Number 1, in connection with canister misalignment, SCE has provided inadequate training, inadequate procedures, poor utilization of their corrective action program, and insufficient oversight. SCE management, number 2, SCE management was not routinely observing dry cask storage operations. And skipping ahead to number 10, contact between the canister and vault components frequently occurred, which SCE failed to adequately report. And perhaps most frustrating of all, number 12, on July 22 of this year, the loading crew experienced difficulty in aligning canister 28 for downloading into the independent spent fuel installation. SCE failed to report this incident. The PowerPoint before you has the remaining violations, but the message is clear. SoCal Edison is having difficulty following the directives of the law and of abiding by the people's wishes to maintain the spent nuclear fuel safely. Aguirre and Severson plan to follow up on this and ask the Commission to do so as well. SCE's repeated safety violations simply cannot be ignored this time. The Commission needs to study SoCal Edison safety violations when it next considers any San Onofre item. Yesterday, there was an item relating to San Onofre on the Commission's agenda, and that was postponed. That presents an opportunity for this Commission to come back around and address San Onofre at the next Commission meeting, which I believe is in February. You are charged with protecting our greatest resources, our coast, and the citizens' right to enjoy that. Please take a closer look at San Onofre fully to make sure that the Commission is fulfilling its obligations to the people of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce Endo.
Good morning, Honorable Commissioners and Chair Boschko. My name is Joyce Endo, and I am a resident of Huntington Beach. I know that the coastal development permit for the Huntington Beach desalination plant is not on your agenda, but since you are in Orange County, I wanted to say a few words about that project. First, we need a local drought-proof water supply. Our water districts have made it clear that there is a great value in developing a local desalination project, and we would appreciate if you allowed our water supply leaders to make that decision. Second, the Bolsa Chica wetlands needs to make sure that there is funding in place to keep the inlet open to allow the flow into the wetlands to keep them healthy. Poseidon's mitigation plan will allow this to happen. Please consider this. Finally, the Carlsbad desalination plant your commission approved just celebrated its 3rd anniversary yesterday, and its 40 billionth gallon of drinking water produced. We would love if Orange County were afforded the same opportunity as you gave San Diego County, and that this is working well down there. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Steve Babyak?
Good morning, Coastal Commission. Whoever pronounced my name did an excellent job. It gets butchered quite often. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Dog Beach. I am a dog lover. I'm also a bird lover. I'm actually vegan, so I get this. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. When I was in grade school, the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. I get the impact of our actions here on Earth. One thing I'd like to say is that I think we could all share the beach. Why can't we? But to say to share the beach and to save the Dog Beach isn't really the true story. It's sharing the tidal zone. Because when I go there, and I go down at lunch, and sometimes later in the day, a minimum of twice a week, I bring my 3 greyhounds. They need to be off leash. They're runners. They're champions. They need to run. And I've only seen respectful people. When we enter the beach, and I know Pamela, who was here earlier, who I just met, mentioned that we leave, as we enter the beach, our dogs are on leash. right? We don't go near the dunes. I've never seen any dogs playing in the dunes. We take them on leash because if you don't, the animal control is definitely going to give you, one, a warning, or two, a very expensive ticket. So as we enter the beach area, we don't go near the dunes. We go straight towards the rocks on the northern side, pretty much hug that until we can get down to the tidal zone. So I don't see where we're interfering with the dunes or anything like that. I've actually never really been in those dunes, nor have I seen any dogs. I did see a quote, and the reason I feel passionate about this is that actually I think someone from Sierra Club said that the dogs leave presents behind and romp and this and play and dig. Well, that's not happening in the dunes. And I got to tell you, I've never seen a more respectful group of people than people at the dog beach, right? I don't see, as they say, presents left behind. I've just never seen that. And I've seen people share bags, hand out bags, and it's almost like a self-policing area. But I think my point here is that we don't want to share the beach. It's a tidal zone. Lastly, I'd just like to say that animal control does a great job of making sure that we have our dogs on the leash, walking them straight towards the rocks, or else you're going to have a penalty. So share the beach, but more accurately, let's share the tidal zone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Laura Davik. You have one person seating time, so you have up to 6 minutes.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Chair Bochco, commissioners, staff, and others. I'm here to talk to you about my very favorite place, Crystal Cove State Park. I'm the founder, the vice president, and the campaign chair. I am here to provide you today with an update on the current status of Crystal Cove State Park and its historic district. Coastal Commission has been working on this project for decades, and I have some good news to share with you about the project that you recently permitted. But first, I would like to walk through and provide you with some updated information on where we are. I went ahead and provided 2-page documents. The first page is the fact sheet on where we're at. You can see it's a beautiful place. I'm sorry I don't have any photos on the screen for you, but the final 17 cottages at Crystal Cove, also known as the Heritage Legacy Project for California. This represents the 17 cottages on the North Beach that have been awaiting restoration. Crystal Cove Conservancy's Capstone Restoration Project is a dedicated campaign focused on completing the restoration and conservation of Crystal Cove's National Register Historic District and expanding public access to Crystal Cove to the North Beach area. The cost of the Phase 3 project is approximately $38 million. Through this campaign, Crystal Cove Conservancy will restore full public access to the beach, the state park, and the North Beach area, preserve Crystal Cove Historic District, a nationally registered historic place for the education and enjoyment of visitors and future environmental stewards. We will renovate and open to the public the remaining 17 cottages, update all infrastructure, and improve the accessibility. We will develop coastal engineering programs and provide overnight lodging for students at the cottage number 20, and we will protect the natural environment, which fosters our mission and supports our vision of a fully restored Crystal Cove by enhancing the quality, the availability, and the sustainability of education programs and outreach to all park visitors. On March 8th, 2017, Coastal Commission granted approval of our coastal development permit. That was a very big day for our organization. You see, these final 17 cottages represent the final piece of Crystal Cove, and this is what will bring financial sustainability to the historic district. The 22 keys, which will ultimately be part of this project, will double the overnight component. Right now, we have about 24,000 people staying annually, so this will double the rentable opportunities at Crystal Cove. Also, as part of this, Coastal Commission's approval granted a $1 million for an education endowment. It's very exciting. We're building a coastal engineering program focused on sea level rise, coastal erosion, and water quality concepts and lessons. We'll provide students with a 2-night stay in Cottage 20, and where they can conduct experiments at Crystal Cove's outdoor classroom. We're partnering with UCI and the Henry Samueli School of Engineering. The infrastructure and the timeline for this project is, the infrastructure portion is 24 months, and the cottage restoration, which will be the second part, is actually 3 years. So when I came before you last, I think we were talking about where we were and the challenges of raising the funds needed to start the first part of this project. The first part and the first challenge of $19 million has been met. So I'm very, very proud to say that on October 1st, through many years and through help from Coastal Commission, through mitigation funds, we should all be very excited that this project has started construction as of December 1st of this year. So for the next 24 months, if you're down at Crystal Cove, please go down and take a look and see what the money that's been invested by people in this community and Coastal Commission together has leveraged to start. It's very, very exciting. Okay, so also I want to stress the importance that at Crystal Cove, even though this challenge has been met, this is the first of 2 challenges. The $19 million that's been met, we are now working on putting together a campaign to work on the final $19 million for Crystal Cove. So Crystal Cove Conservancy will be working with California State Parks and others to create a shared vision and a strategy for identifying the remaining funds needed for this project. And so I'm very happy to say that in January, we will be reaching out to the leaders from California State Parks, Coastal Commission, Coastal Conservancy, Resources Legacy, and our organization to try and pull together a meeting where we can all come together and figure out this last piece. What is the vision for how we close the gap on those final funds as we continue to work with our community to launch a public campaign? We're so excited, and thank you so very much for your support. And please go down and see Crystal Cove if you have a chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I've already spoken to Director Ainsworth, and he's agreed to participate in the meeting, so we're very excited. Thanks. Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
Suzanne Zavada.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Savada. I'm a resident on East Oceanfront. I live there full-time, and I wanted to bring to your attention and possibly give you an update on the fire rings. We have 17 on the east side of the Balboa Pier and another 17 on the west side of the Balboa Pier. Although you've put hours of operation in place, it's never really adhered to. They almost burn for 24 hours a day, near that, in the summertime, not so much at this time of the year, fortunately. It's become a real environmental hazard and health hazard. The sand around the pits are black, the air is smoky, eyes burn from the people walking by and living by there. Your throat burns, it's impossible to have windows and doors open from the pollution. The stench is, you walk out for 1 minute and you come back in the home with your hair and body like you've been in a forest fire. So although the police come at 10 o'clock p.m. to close down the pits, the fire rings, the people often do come back, and they're out there 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. When they finally leave, and they leave, but the fires continue to burn. And when the fires finally burn out, it's about another 2 hours before you have fresh air again, and you can actually open your windows. But before you know it, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and there's more people out, and the whole process repeats itself. So being the Coastal Commission and you people looking over the environment and the health and safety of our beaches, I would respectfully ask you to reconsider the fire rings in the area and to close them down, or at the very, very minimum, if you could really reduce the amount of rings and the hours of operation just to give us fresh air to breathe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's our last public comment, so we'll move it back to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That brings us to item number 5, the informational report on the 1982 Hollister Ranch Public Access Program. Sarah Christie, our Legislative Director, will be presenting this along with Linda Laughlin, our Access Program Manager. So take it away, guys.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. This is an informational briefing on the Coastal Commission's Hollister Ranch Access Program. I did want to note that the Commission, this is an informational item only, and the Commission won't be taking any action today. But staff did set up an email account in advance of today's item for public comment and suggestions on how the program might be updated. We've received a number of emails to that account, and on Tuesday morning we uploaded all that we had at that point and attached them to the report. We've received several more comments since then that have not been attached to the report for logistical reasons, but because this is not an action item and the public comment line is going to be open throughout this process, I just wanted to assure members of the public that we are receiving and retaining those comments, and when there is a final action to be taken, those will be made available to the Commission. So with that, the interest in this topic stems from an issue last year surrounding the proposed settlement agreement to abandon an easement at Hollister Ranch's Corda Beach. The discussion that generated with the public led to a broader discussion about the lack of access at Hollister Ranch generally, which then led to a rediscovery of sorts of the Hollister Ranch Access Program, which was prepared and approved by the Commission in 1981 and amended in 1982, but has never been implemented. So in response to that, last August, Assembly Member Monique Lamone, who represents this district, authored a bill, AB 2534, that would have jump-started the process for actually acquiring the easements necessary to implement the access that's outlined in the program. Although Governor Brown vetoed that bill, his veto message did acknowledge the merits of the bill, but suggested that because the program was 36 years old, that it should be updated before any funding mechanisms are created. So the purpose of today's presentation is to review the Commission's statutory authority for the Access Program, its specific components, and the process for updating the program going forward. Hollister Ranch is a 14,000-acre historic cattle ranch that was originally part of a Spanish land grant. In 1971, which was just before the passage of Proposition 20, the entire ranch was subdivided into 135 approximately 100-acre parcels. Hollister Ranch is a central piece of the larger Gaviota Coast, which is the ancestral home of the Chumash First Peoples. Today, it has the dubious distinction of being the least accessible stretch of coastline in California. Along with the privately owned Coho-Halama Ranch and Vandenberg Air Force Base, these properties together constitute more than 60 miles of shoreline, with less than 2 miles of that open to the public. With over 8 miles of south-facing shoreline, Hollister Ranch is a coveted surf spot. The Ranch Owners Association maintains a private road, Rancho Real, that stretches the length of the property roughly parallel to the coast, with several smaller roads that provide access down to the sandy beaches. Ranch rules limit beach access to property owners, their family and friends, and private guests, which allow in the aggregate for a theoretical maximum of approximately 3,000 visitors per day. Although the property was subdivided prior to Prop 20 and the Coastal Act, all subsequent development has required coastal development permits from either the Commission or the County of Santa Barbara through its certified LCP. And even though it is a private subdivision, Hollister has not been exempt from the public access policies of the Act. At first, the Commission attempted to secure public access through permit conditions, which was typical of the time. This was, for instance, how the YMCA easement was created at Corda Beach. But this approach met with significant opposition from property owners, resulting in multiple lawsuits with conflicting opinions at the trial level, all of which went up on appeal. The landowners' primary argument, in a nutshell, was that private individuals did not have the legal authority to grant public access across land owned collectively by the association. In other words, Rancho Real and the spur roads down to the sandy beaches. So, to avoid years of legal wrangling and at significant state expense, the legislature passed AB 643 in 1979. The bill amended the Coastal Act to give the Commission the discretion to pursue an alternative approach for securing public access in coastal subdivisions by replacing individual responsibility for providing access with a process that would instead spread that obligation generally among all property owners. Coastal Act Section 30610.3, which was added by 643, authorizes the Commission to identify coastal areas with inadequate access, such as Hollister Ranch. Upon designation of an eligible area, the Commission is charged with preparing and adopting an integrated access program that outlines the type of amenities to be provided. The Coastal Conservancy's subsequent role is then to establish in lieu fees to fund the necessary acquisitions, purchase the easements, build the improvements, and carry out the program, either directly or through a partnership agreement, guided by a management plan prepared by the Conservancy. In this way, property owners are free to build by paying into a fund for managed access to meet their obligations under the Coastal Act, instead of doing so parcel by parcel. This approach seemed like a great idea at the time, and the Coastal Commission supported AB 643. The bill was signed by Governor Jerry Brown in his second term. And in August of 1981, the Commission adopted the first Hollister Ranch Access Program, providing hiking, biking, camping, and shuttle van access to 6 of Hollister's beaches, along with restrooms, rangers, and recreational facilities. It was amended a year later in response to recommendations from an environmental assessment that was underway at the time the original program was adopted. The primary changes between the 1981 and the 1982 versions was the institution of daily visitation limits and phased access, which Linda Laughlin will go over in more detail. However, although many properties went ahead with their development plans as soon as the bill was signed, they still weren't willing to agree to the idea of public access. The Conservancy was denied the entry they needed to conduct the necessary surveys beyond a few limited common areas of the ranch. Without the underlying surveys, the Conservancy couldn't calculate the value of the properties and hence couldn't negotiate purchase prices or determine the appropriate amount of the in lieu fee. So while development proceeded apace at Hollister, the access program that enabled it was effectively stalled. That was clearly not what the legislature had in mind. So, in 1982, the legislature stepped in again, this time with AB 321, which amended the Coastal Act to add Section 30610.8, setting the Hollister in lieu fee at $5,000 and invoking the authority of the Public Works Board in conjunction with the Conservancy to provide public access at Hollister Ranch, quote, in a timely manner and as expeditiously as possible, end quote. The in lieu fee was supposed to increase by 5% per year once the easements were acquired. AB 321 also directed the expenditure of a $500,000 appropriation from the 1981 Budget Act to begin the acquisition process. But there was still a problem. The Conservancy still couldn't get on the property. So finally, in November of 1982, the Public Works Board, on behalf of the Conservancy, requested the Attorney General to pursue a court order for entry at Hollister Ranch. But other forces were also at work in 1982. George Duke Machen, who had campaigned on a platform of abolishing the Coastal Commission, was elected governor of the state. Once in office, he did his best to make good on his promise, cutting the commission's budget by over 50%, appointing commissioners who did not support the program, and replacing all of the voting members of the Public Works Board. The legislature passed a series of bills over the next few years trying to expand both the commission's and the Conservancy's authorities, but the governor vetoed them all. In 1983, the court finally granted the state's earlier request for entry at Hollister Ranch. The order was good for 180 days. The Hollister Ranch Owners Association requested a 1-month delay, and the reconstituted Public Works Board agreed. After that, the trail goes cold. As the coastal agencies assumed a more defensive posture under the new administration, priorities necessarily shifted. The prospects for implementing the access program grew dim, and it slowly slipped into obscurity. So that's how we got here 36 years later, with an adopted program but no public access at Hollister Ranch. Because the easements were never acquired, the 5% annual increase has never kicked in, and the in lieu fee remains at the 1981 level of $5,000 per permit, which has accrued in the amount of approximately $300,000 currently held by the Conservancy. If the easements had been acquired in a timely manner as anticipated, the current value of the in lieu fee would be about $30,000. Yet the program itself is still a valid document that could be implemented as is. But with renewed interest in re-evaluating the public access opportunities at Hollister and updating the program accordingly, this is a good time to consider just what the 1982 program envisioned. Linda Laughlin, our Public Access Program Manager, will take it from here to go over the various components.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. So let me just give you a little context where Hollister Ranch is. It's located directly adjacent or west of Gaviota State Park, and here's a slide of the state park. To reach Hollister Ranch by road, visitors travel from Highway 101 and take the exit to Gaviota State Park. Quickly, the road forks, and if you go left or west or east, you turn into the state park, and if you go west, you reach the Hollister Ranch gate. Here's a picture of Gaviota State Park taken from the pier, which I'll discuss in a minute, and you can look back and see a big, wide, sandy beach, very popular. There's all sorts of beach activities, people in the water, there's camping, there's a large parking lot, there is restrooms. The pier and a hoist for launching of motorized boats, as I said, this is where that picture is taken from, is pending for repair and reopening. And when that hoist and pier are reopened to the public, boaters will be able to access the shoreline off of Hollister Ranch a little more easily. The 1982 Access Program designates Gaviota State Park as the staging area for visitors to Hollister Ranch. So visitors would be parking their private vehicles in the state park parking lot. They would use the restrooms, and they would be able to visit the kiosk. The park is also designated as the shuttle location for the 15 passenger vans that will take visitors into the Hollister Ranch shoreline area. This is a photo of the existing ranch entrance gate. It's a security gate, so if you drive up the road into toward Hollister, this is what you are met with, and all guests must be all stopped there. They're all checked in, and there is strictly controlled access into the ranch. This next photo is looking basically from that guard area, looking west along a portion of the beginning of Hollister Ranch. You can see the ranch road on the right-hand side of the screen, and on the left-hand side, you can see the railroad tracks, which parallel much of the shoreline. And then, of course, there's the actual beaches moving on in the far distance of that photograph. The ranch road is a rural in nature. It meanders with the topography. Speeds are moderate, and that's what would be used to ferry the public out to and along the shoreline. Again, this is the adopted program, 1982. The ranch access program was initially adopted in 1981. At the time it was adopted, the Commission acknowledged that the program might be needed to be amended in light of a pending environmental assessment. That assessment was completed and then adopted by the Commission in 1982. After that, the Commission directed the staff to amend the program based upon this assessment, as well as per discussions with the Hollister Ranch owners as well as the Coastal Conservancy staff. And then what you have before us today, which is the adopted version of the Access Program, again, August 1982. This Access Program consists of two major sections. The first section contains the Coastal Commission findings for adoption of the program. The second section describes the phasing and implementation of the access improvements. The findings contain a lot of useful information that is still very relevant today, such as description of the topography, the history, and past commission actions, as well as facts relating to the mileage, acreage, and site names. Other findings clearly need to be updated to reflect the number of developed lots, the location of existing private recreational facilities, and the current level of public use. Other findings may or may not require revisions such as beach width, distribution of species and habitat, current agricultural operations, and the possibility of linkages with county trail systems. So as I described, the access program is phased and monitored. The first component of the program is the use of a shuttle van to get the public out into the ranch. It would be staged again at Gaviota State Park, and entrance would be by a shuttle van system. There would be no private cars allowed onto the ranch. The program as adopted would limit public use initially to 100 people per day during the first year, and it would increase over time to a maximum of 500 people per day. The program would allow for public access hours between 6 a.m. or sunrise to 9 p.m. There would be ongoing monitoring between the three phases of implementation to account for and adjust for any impacts, and there will be a separate management plan for each phase prepared by the Conservancy and prepared by the Conservancy for Commission, Executive Director review and approval. In addition to the shuttle van program, pedestrians would be allowed to walk along an easement along the road. That picture I showed you previously gave you an idea what the road looks like, and then use the existing crossroads to reach the beaches. When the tides are low and the seas are calm, some beachgoers would be able to walk along significant portions of the shoreline, and some of the beach areas would connect to each other, making at times for a nice long walk beach experience. The program also includes an easement for bicyclists to use the road. They would be using the road along with vehicles. It would be a Class 3 bicycle pathway. I want to note that the program also provides that 20% of all daily users could either ride a bike or walk in as opposed to using the shuttle system. The program also recognized the need to construct beach facilities for the general public. Each of the 6 beaches that I'll show you some pictures of have private facilities already constructed for the Hollister Ranch homeowners and their guests. But for the general public, the program acknowledges that facilities would be needed, such as restrooms, drinking water, showers, trash cans, and signage to explain the rules, as well as security guards. This is an overview of Hollister Ranch with the 6 beaches that are included in the program. Again, it's a phased implementation for opening to the public. The first phase would be the 2 beaches called San Agustin, that's on the far west, and Sakati, which is in the middle reach. Both of these beaches are generally wide sandy beaches that we believe could easily accommodate the new public users without significant impact for environmental impacts. And the program, again, would limit the public use to 100 persons per day for year 1 and could be increased to 200 persons in year 2. Then let me show you 2 pictures. Here's San Agustin Beach, and again, you can look above the beach. You see an existing parking area with a car or more. This is what Hollister Ranch homeowners and their guests use today. Here's another picture of the second beach that would be included in Phase 1, Sakate. which is also the site of, the eastern end is the site of the Corta Canyon Beach, the YMCA beach. And I would encourage you to take a look at additional pictures on the Coastal Records program, because what we're showing here, this is 8.5 miles of shoreline, and I'm just showing you like one snapshot for one piece of each of these beaches, but there's many more to show off the extensive shoreline that's at discussion here. Here's a picture of Sakate Beach. You may remember this from our presentation in July when we gave you the briefing on the YMCA litigation. This is just on the ground. You can see that, it's a nice sandy beach. Here's Phase 2 beach, Bolito Beach in the middle reach. And again, in the background, you can see that there's a developed parking area and some other facilities for the private homeowners. This, in year 2, we would be adding Bolito and Drake's, both in the middle reach, and the daily users would be increased to 300 persons per day in the first year and expand to 400 in the third year. Here is Drake's Beach. Again, this is the second phase. And then Phase 3, the last phase, are the 2 beaches that are at the eastern end, closest to Gaviota State Park. This Phase 3 would start in year 5, and it would run for 1 or more years. These are the 2 beaches called Agua Caliente and Alegria. Both are located at the end, at the terminus of 2 small creeks, and in the environmental assessment were identified as having the most sensitive resources. So therefore, the program that was adopted calls for the preparation of a management plan before these 2 areas are open for public use. When these 2 beaches are open, they would be limited to scientific and educational purposes only, and users would be limited to 500 people per day per beach. So in summary, the program, when fully implemented in year 5, with the total daily public use would be limited to 500 people per day. So the next steps, and this is the last slide that we have. The next steps are, in 1979, the legislature directed the Coastal Commission to prepare the access program for the Conservancy to amend the program through a detailed access management plan. So in approving the 1982 program, the Commission found that the program was based on sound planning principles to provide public access opportunities while protecting sensitive resources and private property rights. But given the passage of over 36 years since the program was adopted, it is reasonable to consider updating the program to take into account current conditions and changed circumstances. Since the essential and critical components are embedded within the existing program, the update will not require a complete rewrite. Staff recommends that the 1982 environmental assessment be updated to reflect the current beach conditions, public concerns, and management issues. Identification of biological and cultural resources and including policies to ensure their protection is essential. The updated program will provide the framework for the Conservancy to prepare the access management plan. This plan will provide the specific details on how the public will actually be provided access on a daily basis in a way that does not harm resources, as well as and takes into account environmental justice concerns into account. Potential components of this management plan may include such things as seasonal restrictions at certain beaches to protect sensitive resources, such as snowy plovers and harbor seals, increased protection of tide pool areas, docent monitors to educate the public about the resources and the rules protecting them to ensure compliance with those rules, identification of specific locations for the beach access support facilities and ensure that any biological and cultural sites are protected and are mitigated from construction and use activities. And the plan will also need to include adaptive management strategies that provide for modifying the plan over time as needed based upon annual evaluation by both the Conservancy and the Commission. We intend to hold a pretty extensive public process for the updating of the access program. We will solicit public input by holding a public workshop, and we have targeted March for a workshop in Santa Barbara. We've already entered into discussions with our sister agencies who share the mandate to provide public access opportunities for all Californians. The Conservancy and the Commission, along with state parks and state lands, are working together and are intending to sign a memorandum of cooperation that will facilitate the opening of beaches along the Hollister Ranch shoreline. And when the draft access program is prepared, we will share this with the public prior to adoption by the Coastal Commission. And in summary, the last thing I'd like to say before we hand this over to Jack is that one thing we know for sure that has changed over the intervening 36 years is that California's population has almost doubled since the plan was adopted, from about 23 million in 1980 to over 40 million today. While the population has grown immensely, the miles of California coastline have not changed. The demand for public access to and along the coast grows greater every year. Thank you. Jack?
Thank you. That was a great report. I just wanted to let you all know that we kicked this whole effort off with a meeting on November 27th with our agency executive directors and their chief deputies who are involved in this effort, which is Conservancies, State Lands Commission, and the state park staff. It was a really positive meeting, a lot of enthusiasm behind this effort. And I just want everyone to know, I think the interagency team wants you all to know and the public to know that we are really committed to a meaningful and effective public outreach on this update. We're also committed to exploring new and creative ideas. This is, for the update, and not just stick with the what's in the plan. But it's been 36 years since that plan was developed. We're in a whole different world today, and so we need to be able to explore those ideas. And over the next couple of months, we'll be working on assembling that baseline information to help us inform this update. And State Lands Commission staff surveyors, they were out last week surveying the mean high tide line along the beach. They'll be out in early January, continuing surveys and aerial surveys of the upland areas as well to establish some good baseline information, mapping, and that sort of thing. One thing that was positive is that the ranch owners were very cooperative with the State Lands Commission on those surveys, and we hope we continue that cooperative relationship with the ranch owners, and we'll be reaching out to the ranch owners and involving them, of course, in this process. And as Sarah and Linda had mentioned, the program's a higher level vision, and I wanted everyone to understand that framework to help provide access into the ranch. And that second phase gets in sort of the nitty gritty. What are the facilities and what development we need to get people into the ranch, which is the second phase. We've assembled a working group among, working on that, of our agency partners to work on the program, to come up with a program work plan and timeline for completion of the plan. We want to move the plan, I say program. Sarah gets on me every time about program. The plan comes second. So figure out a timeline. We're going to have an aggressive timeline here. We want to move forward quickly on the program as quickly as possible, but allowing enough time for adequate public input up front. And that's the key. We don't want to just hand a plan that we've developed to the public. We want that early input on the plan from the public and those creative ideas. So with that, we're very excited about this whole effort, and I turn it back over to you, Chair Bochco.
Thank you very much. I have several speaker slips here.
Can I make a comment
You may.
before we do that? This commission asked State Lands at its meeting in August, and Commissioner Lueveno came and on behalf of the commission and made a request that State Lands use all of its tools. That is a new thing and a new level of collaboration that we haven't exactly had before. And that led to this survey. And the best thing about the survey, just to emphasize it, is the ranch was open to us. They hired their own, I think this is funny, they hired their own surveyor to go around with our surveyor. All that means is we're going to both have the same data, which I actually think is a good thing. And we go up with our drones in January. But I just wanted to report, when you launch these kind of things that nobody's done before, you don't quite know how it's all going to end, because I've done enough of that in my life. But this one has turned out well, and I think we will make a good contribution to what is the first set of data on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to start with our speaker, Susan Jordan. And you have someone's seating time. Do you want 6 minutes?
I think I'll be done before that, but
Okay.
I don't like to rush at the end. It's a protective mechanism. Okay, so let me just get started here. Okay, so I've made several presentations to this commission on this, and it's about why fighting for the public's right to access the coast matters and why your involvement matters. Okay. Not working? Is it on? Shouldn't it be on? I don't know. Oh, one had to turn it on. Live and learn. Okay. All right, so the numbers here are theoretical in the sense that they're real in the sense that this is what Hollister Ranch allows for the owners and the guests of the owners. So there's 133, there's 135, but I think 2 are reserved. So 3,300 acre parcels, roughly 100 acres. Each parcel can have 12 owners and 12 guests per day. That's 24 owner visitors per day times 133 parcels. That's roughly the 3,000 visitors, owner visitors per day. That's over 1 million per year. So I just want to put that in context of the numbers that we talked about, the maximum that would be allowed for the public, which was starting in phase 1 at 100 and going up through the 3 phases with some restriction at the end to 500 possibly. Okay, so when you read your public comments that were attached, they don't have all the public comments because the alerts that went out for this didn't go out until they had already accumulated them and posted them. So go back in and read the additional comments that came in. But when you read the comments, and this is a thing that has concerned me from day one, the themes that come out are for me, distressing, okay? The public will destroy the environment, the taxpayers will foot the bill, private property is off limits to the public, unfettered access will overrun resources, we don't want garbage-strewn areas, pollution, devastation, only Hollister owners have been and can be stewards of the environment at Hollister Ranch. I don't buy these arguments, and it distresses me that this is the way the public is uniformly and routinely described when we talk about providing reasonable and respectful access at Hollister Ranch. So what are the considerations in updating the 1982 Public Access Program? And I thought the report was great. One of the things that we're concerned about is getting input at the front end on how to proceed here. There's different user groups, bicyclists, hikers, disabled. I mean, there's just, you go down the list. And so we just feel that, and I think also that list includes Hollister Ranch owners, because they have a certain knowledge of their own, situation and the land there. I think we have to be concerned and aware that there will probably be efforts, I should not say probably, there will be efforts to delay this process and potentially political pressure, which we saw when Lamone did her bill, to block public access. So I think we have to anticipate that, and I don't think delay is not our friend. It has to be appropriate, the time period that's given, but we have to be mindful of the challenge that we're going to face. Funding, that was the thing that came up in those public comments that really got me going, because I don't think that the homeowners, many of them, even understood that they were required to provide subdivision-wide access. they seem not to be aware of this requirement that is explicit in the Coastal Act. And they can go read it. It's right there in black and white. In terms of paying for this, as Sarah was trying to describe, they were supposed to pay for this plan. They were supposed, the $5,000 in lieu fee was to go to fund part of this public access. And I think they need to understand that that was part of their responsibility in exchange for not having to provide individual offers to dedicate per parcel. It was a gift, in a way, to them, but they had a responsibility for getting that gift, which was the in lieu fee to help fund the public access program at Hollister Ranch. So what should public access look like? Again, you know, looking at the different sectors, the different user groups, and that have been excluded so far, we really need to hear from them. We believe public access should be crafted in a manner that is protective of environmental resources and respectful of the rights of private property owners. So this whole idea that, you know, they're going to open up and the floodgates are going to open and people are going to, you know, run in and throw trash on the beach, this is not what we envision. This is not what we want for Hollister Ranch. And these arguments really don't hold water. We believe the access should be managed in a way that's fair to the public and the owners. And that phasing it in over time is a good way to monitor what kind of impact it's actually having. I have to say that there are certain things, I was surprised actually by slide 4, which had cars on the beach. I mean, literally a foot from wet sand. And I was also surprised to see when you went through the beaches, which was very helpful, the number of parking areas that already exist that don't have to be constructed. I don't know what other facilities are there, but I think this is a good plan, and I'm grateful to all the agencies that are working on this and standing up for the rights of the public, of which we're all members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's see, who's this? Anna Citron.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Anna Citron, an attorney with the Law Office of Mark Chatillo, one of the attorneys representing the Gaviota Coastal Trail Alliance, an ad hoc alliance of organizations, including Coast Walk, the Santa Barbara Trails Council, the Gaviota Coast Conservancy, and California Coastal Protection Network, that formed in response to the proposed settlement agreement on the YMCA OTD litigation. And we've been granted intervener status by Judge Stern, and I'm pleased to announce that just this week, Judge Stern released a new ruling against Hollister Ranch's latest effort to limit our involvement in the litigation. So now we will be proceeding to the fairness hearing on January 14th at 1:30 p.m., at which time the judge will consider whether the settlement agreement is fair to the public in addition to the Hollister Ranch owners. We recognize that the Hollister Ranch OTD is but one piece in a larger puzzle of public access at Hollister Ranch, and we're very grateful that you've convened this informational briefing and that you're committed to moving this access program forward. There are many elements of this access program that are excellent. The phased implementation approach that was derived from the environmental assessment is a very good idea to make sure that that resources are not harmed inadvertently, and that managed access proceeds in a very thoughtful manner. And we encourage those aspects of the plan to continue. But as has been acknowledged, this plan is over 30 years old, and it does require updating. And I would echo the comments of the previous speaker, that what is missing from the public outreach description in the staff report is a stakeholder process. And that we see as being critical to informing the plan, or the program rather, at its very early stages. And we envision that as including environmental organizations that have been active in the area and with public access in general, environmental justice organizations that speak for the needs of various user groups that are often not represented in our public access plans, and also Hollister Ranch owners. And we are perhaps naively optimistic, but we are optimistic that maybe some common ground can be reached at the stakeholder process, and that could avert some of the later disputes regarding this program. So we would request that Gaviota Coastal Trail Alliance is included in any stakeholder outreach. And again, we thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you. Todd Cardiff?
Good morning, Honorable Coastal Commissioners. Because I am also an attorney that's working on the lawsuit over the settlement between the Coastal Commission and the Hollister Ranch Owners Association, I want to make it clear that I am not representing any group today. I have been and am a member of Surfrider for the last 25 years. I've been surfing for 30 years. I've never had access to Hollister Ranch. I believe that you either believe in the Coastal Act and the California Constitution regarding public access or you don't. And this is our chance to gain public access to a very precious area of the beach. Boat-only access to the coast is not public access. It is not public access. Discriminatory access to the beach is not public access. When a group can choose who can make it to the beach on it invites favoritism. Therefore, that's not public access. The only access that I think that we need to look at is limited access, and that's limited based on a first come, first served basis. And the way that this can be implemented in a very controlled manner is the same way that state parks already reserves campsites. And that's by having a reservation system that is available to everybody through the internet, where you can reserve the access to Hollister Ranch in a very controlled manner, and that can be for bicyclists, that can be for surfers, that can be for pedestrians, and for groups that absolutely need some kind of transportation. That can be shuttle vans, and it needs to be in a reservation manner. I look forward to making sure that access to Hollister Ranch is done in an environmentally sensitive manner, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Beth, I believe, Beth Shine.
Hello, my name is Beth Shevin. I am a resident of Los Angeles County. I'm a 35-year owner at the Hollister Ranch. So I'm going to give you my input. I supported the 1972 Coastal Act. I still support what it stood for back then, public access and preserving and protecting our beautiful coastline. I believe in managed access to protect and preserve that beautiful coastline. And public access at Hollister Ranch is a complicated and multifaceted issue, as we've all talked about here. As you've all heard, it's a rural and rugged environment that complicates things. I have one thing to ask the Coastal Commission to do, and that would be to include the Hollister Ranch community in your discussions as you move forward in order to make a viable plan that will work for everybody. I really urge you to include the Hollister Ranch community. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Healy?
Thank you for having me up. I've listened to the comments. I know this has been an ongoing issue from the public access standpoint, and I just want to also emphasize the importance of including the Hollister Ranch owners who have taken care of this coastline and have protected it and do maintain a very strong position on preserving the natural resources up there. And it's tough to think about allowing the amount of people to come pouring into the ranch. I also want to make the point that there are other parks along the 101 that I would really emphasize you look at the amount of people that actually enjoy those parks. And I think there's a ton of capacity, and there's a lot of good things that could be done with El Capitan and with the park at Gaviota. And I think the resources of the state should be focused on the areas that are more populated, and the millions of dollars that go into these things in a place like Hollister should be focused in areas where more people can have access instead of just a few people going up into Central California. We talked about population growth. The population growth is in Southern California, in the LA area, San Diego, Orange County, and I think there's a lot of more resources that could be placed down there than this effort up here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Patrick Rebstock.
Hi, Commissioners. Thanks for having me. I grew up in Santa Barbara, California, and I went to school at San Luis Obispo at Cal Poly. And I've spent my whole entire life being an environmentally focused, outdoor activities user in this area. And I just want to really stress that there are some places that have really unique natural resources. There's places that plants and animals really are allowed to kind of exist in a state that's not completely interfered with on a daily basis, on a minute basis, on an hour basis by, dogs and people and stuff. And I just drove up from La Jolla on my way up, and I spent my time going up the coast here, and it was kind of shocking to see the amount of impact that like coastal development and like human use and the different paving over of things for parking lots and bathrooms and everything. It just really totally changes the scope of a coastline. And what I'd advocate for is really allowing to protect special zones in the coast. If you look at geographically the area from Gaviota to Conception and you go around, this is a really unique place for plants and animals. And it's one of the few places where you see a lot of wild animals. There's tons of mountain lions. There's, the mountain lions are down onto the beach. There's, all sorts of animals that you wouldn't see in plants elsewhere. And that's because there isn't a ton of human impact all the time. And so what I would ask is to really look at, like, if we're going forward in the future, I'm a young person, but, like, we only have the opportunity to protect things, like, before they're destroyed. And so when you look at, like, large numbers of people coming in and the beaches that they were showing in the photos there, those beaches at high tide are non-existent. They're to the toe of the bluff. And what you might not realize is because most of the cliffs along California are pretty solid and they're like sandstone and different stuff, but the cliffs up there are clay and they're constantly crumbling and falling down. And so what happens to these 500 people when high tide comes around, and that comes every 6 hours? There's nowhere to go. It's literally, sometimes when there's big surf, it's crashing up against the cliff and it's a dangerous situation. And the cliffs are always kind of crumbling and falling down, and you really wouldn't see it unless you grew up like seeing that, and it's really dangerous. So I just want to really kind of have you guys look into the, preserving the environment where urban sprawl hasn't gotten to already, because we only have very few places left, and then also looking into the safety concerns of having people in really remote areas without cell phone service. It's like an hour and 15 minutes to get any sort of ambulance or anything there, and just kind of look at the aspects of what would it take to actually preserve a place.
I'm sorry, did you say you live in Hollister Ranch?
No, I'm from Santa Barbara, California, on the Mesa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom Van Meter?
Nice to be able
Have this public comment. Oh, I'm sorry.
Microphone, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like yelling.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to you. Yes, I'm a Hollister Ranch owner. I have flakjack on. I'm just kidding. Anyways, I think I bring somewhat of a unique approach to this. I live in Santa Barbara, but I have two offices, one in Santa Barbara and one in Lompoc. For the last 40 years, I've been driving to Lompoc twice a week, and that's all along the Gaviota coast. And yes, the population has increased significantly, as you know, but I will tell you, in 40 years of driving up and down that coast, the environment has not changed that much. And what I mean by that, it's the surf. It's the surf that's driving this. If there was, in my opinion, if there was no surf at Hollister Ranch, this would all just go away. If you look at, I think the Coastal Commission turned down an access to the Doheny Ranch, which is a much closer to Santa Barbara than Hollister Ranch, but it was turned down because the development they wanted was more than they wished for. But the point was there was also no surf there. There was no public outcry to have access. So, anyways, when you drive up the coast, and anyone can do this, if there's no surf, there's no traffic. There's no parking along the freeway. It's empty. And if you go to Hollister Ranch and there's no surf, guess what? It's the same thing. I was at Hollister Ranch on Wednesday, and that 8.5 miles of beach, there was one surfer. So if we go to the expense, and so I'm not arguing the points of, yes, no, whatever, but I'm just saying if you go to the expense of building a trail and the access and the vans and everything else, my guess is that it'll only be used, one, in the summer on the weekends, and two, from pretty much September to June when there's big surf. My son-in-law is a surfer and also access to Hollister Ranch. When there's no surf, guess what? He surfs in Goleta. Because to get up to Hollister Ranch is not an easy task. It's an hour up there, then you're talking about a van ride that would be another 45 minutes. Surfers aren't going to go up there, how's my sight? Surfers are not going to go up there to surf waist-high waves. They're going to go up there when it's big, and like I say, that's from September to June. So it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be a very expensive project that is going to be minimally used for the money being spent on it.
Thank you. Sam George.
Do I have anyone seating any time for me? No, that's it? Okay. My name's Sam George. I'm a professional surfer, former editor of Surfer Magazine. I'm a documentary filmmaker. And I just want to stress, I am not now, nor have I ever been, a Hollister Ranch owner. But that doesn't mean that the ranch hasn't been a huge part of my life. I first saw pictures of the promised land of surfing, this remote area, in 1967 in an issue of Surfer Magazine. It loomed large in our imaginations. It loomed large in our mythology, so much so that in 1974, we jumped out of our car at a gas station in Gaviota because a freight train was going by with open boxcars, and we jumped into the boxcars so that we could go through the ranch and see the promised land. Of course, we had to figure out how to get back to our cars from San Luis Obispo later, but the next year, we accessed the ranch. We got a boat, we launched it off the pier, and we got to surf that beautiful coastline, that pristine California coastline. Well, last Friday, I paddled away from the boat and once again enjoyed a day surfing that pristine California coastline. And the only reason why I could do that 43 years later was because of the continuing limited access to the ranch. As editor of Surfer Magazine, our editorial stance, we were always against opening access to the ranch. And the reason why is because we learned a lesson in our own backyard. San Mateo Creek wetlands, known as Trestles, down in San Clemente, the premier surf spot. It was leased to the state by the Navy. You could access it. They provided access with a pedestrian trail, with a hiking trail. It's about a mile. Well, in the mid-'80s or late '80s, a very well-meaning environmental group, the Surfrider Foundation, turned their attention from clean water to public access. And they managed to get get a large plot of land above Trestles, and they put in about 250 parking spots. Previous to that, the amount of people that could use trestles was limited by parking. Well, now suddenly 500 new people could use the trestles area. So what ensued? Of course, garbage, graffiti, trampled foliage, defecation, crowded surf. By providing unlimited access like that, or increased access, it really ruined the experience for everybody. Now, as somebody that over 40 years, I have hiked, I have boated, I have paddled, I have sailed, I have kayaked into the ranch. I've never been denied access to the ranch. I used to resent the elitism of the owners that actually owned that. But as time went on, I realized that that inadvertent stewardship is really what has kept the ranch so beautiful and maintained and protected the environment that lets someone like me and lets anyone else who is suitably inspired and suitably motivated to still experience what it's like on that beautiful stretch of coast. Thanks.
Thanks. Hello, we don't clap, we don't make noise. Thank you very much.
Rich Jardine.
Thank you so much for listening to me, and thank you for protecting our coast. The ranch is a sleepy, lonely California coastal ranch where the wildlife is a star, not the owners. People are hardy people. They like the water. They don't overcrowd the place. They protect the wildlife. The guidelines here set forth, there's just the amount of people to come into the ranch is overwhelming. On the 4th of July or Labor Day, there might be as many as 12, 15 people at each cabana. Nests, the birds and the kangaroo mouse, they're not trampled. Everybody is a conservationist up there. And I don't think anybody that really, from outside the ranch, that would want to come visit the ranch would ever want to see 600 people crowding the beaches. They would want to see the ranch the way it is now. And so many bad things that go along with overcrowding, because there are people that care and there's people that don't care. And that can never be changed. Human beings are the way they are. The whole canyon, and there's a huge fire hazard up there. There's a brush line that goes entirely through the ranch. The wind blows at the ranch all the time. If fire were ever to start, it would burn the entire ranch. The canyon outside the ranch at Gaviota State Beach was burned. I don't know if it was 10, 12, 15 years ago. Burned all the way up and down over the tops of both mountains. That would have happened a mile down the road or a half a mile, it would have burned the entire ranch. The plan has to be scaled back. You have to learn to crawl before you walk. Visitation plan is, 100 people at a time coming to a beach. It's pretty much never crowded. It would be too much. There's just too many things involved with people that care and people that don't care. It's a fact that people vandalize bathrooms. They leave lots of things in the soft sand buried that affects the marine life. And they don't have anybody up there to drag the beach like they do here in Newport. You got to see some of the stuff that comes out of the beach here.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Jill
thank you.
Hunt.
Good morning. I'm Jill Hunt. I live here in Newport Beach, and I'm also an owner at Hollister Ranch. Growing up here, I used to go down to the area where Crystal Cove is, and I would look up at the hillside and watch the beautiful green hills and the cows all over the hills, and then I would go to the stables and I would ride horses along the bluff top. It was the way the California coast was to me when I was little. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to school in Santa Barbara, and I again fell in love with the California coast when I found a place that was a sleepy beach town like my old Newport Beach. And I've done everything I possibly could to be able to get back up to Santa Barbara, to be able to enjoy that untouched, beautiful stretch of California coast. I saw the pictures that were put up in your report, and I have to say that I was quite shocked because I go up to Hollister Ranch quite a bit, and oftentimes I show up and the Gaviota campsite is closed. There's a gate across it. It is in extreme disrepair. It looks nothing like the picture that was put in front of you. It was a very beautiful presentation, but I don't think it accurately reflects some of the beaches and the area right there. The Gaviota Pier has been broken for quite some time and hasn't been repaired. And what that does is it makes me very scared for public access to the Hollister Ranch. Is it going to turn out like the Gaviota campsite? Nobody's there because it's terrible. What the Coastal Commission should work on doing is repairing and making better access to some of those points south of Hollister Ranch, or east of Hollister Ranch, actually, with the coast, and see how many people use that. Sometimes there's nobody in the Gaviota campsite. So I don't understand why there's a big push to make sure everybody can have access to the Hollister Ranch when people aren't even using the access points that are in existence. I've never seen as many people at the Gaviota Beach as were in that picture. Another thing that struck me about the presentation is the beautiful white sandy beaches on Hollister Ranch. I don't know that I've ever seen the Hollister Ranch with beaches that look like that. They're often filled with seaweed. There's often no sand on the beaches because the large surf has washed away the sand and it's all rocky, and it's not a place that the public would necessarily want to come and spend time. I think it's very important as you're moving forward that you include the owners of the Hollister Ranch in your managed access plan. Currently, as owners, we're not allowed to camp at Hollister Ranch. There is no camping for owners there. There are many people who own at the Hollister Ranch that don't have houses, and they come in and they use it for the day, and then they leave, or they go stay with a friend. But there's no camping allowed there. I'm concerned that the state, in its economic crisis, is not going to be effectively able to manage it. I understand that there was money set aside with these offers, with the offer to dedicate the $5,000 in lieu access fee, and I think that they said that there's $300,000 there. I don't even know that that would cover the cost of paving the road to the first beach. So I think that it's really important that the Coastal Commission really look and see how this money will be spent. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last speaker slip that I have on the matter. This is an informational hearing, so we're not going to take any action, but I just feel the need to say something at this point. You know, I find it so interesting that human nature is so unaware of itself. People come here today, and I think you probably feel every right to do this, and that in some way that we're attacking your rights, telling us that humans are ruining the beach, that access by the public is going to somehow make your pristine property no longer pristine, the wildlife will disappear, etc. I find that somewhat offensive. I find it to in a way, be a very subtle kind of elitism, that for some reason you're better at protecting natural habitat than anyone else, including the state or people who have environmental interests. I find it interesting that you say no one would want to go there anyway, and if that were the truth, then there wouldn't be an issue. You would let them try and they wouldn't come. So I find a lot of what was said today very troubling, and I can see why for the last 36 years, the people of this type of thinking have blocked the state from doing what it legally had the right to do, which was to have an access program to Hollister Ranch's beaches. That's the law. And the law applies to everybody, to Hollister Ranch and to the public. And there are a lot of people who have never seen Hollister Ranch, including myself, because you can't get there. So I would say it would be up to each individual who felt they'd like to go there, whether they want to surf, or they just want to see a pretty beach, or they want to see a seal, or whatever it is that takes them to Hollister Ranch. Give them a shot at it. And if you have a problem, if they really do hurt the land, there are recourses for that. So if you cooperate and allow these agencies and the state and the public to come to you and ask for your cooperation, which I think has been asked for 36 years. Cooperation on our part has never been the problem. So if you're willing to cooperate, like at least 2 or 3 people have said today, we'll sit down and talk about it. You know, find out what really is at issue here. Nobody wants to ruin pristine property. That's absurd. We have state parks. You want to make it a park? Make it a park. Give it away. You shouldn't be able to enjoy it any more than any other human being. You are no better of a steward than we are. So, I'm sorry, that was not my role here, and I'm going to turn it back to staff, and then if any other commissioners want to make a comment, I'll shut up.
Nothing else from us, Madam Chair. I have nothing to add.
Thank you. If I may, first I commend staff for continuing on this, and I also commend our sister agencies for working with us, joining in the effort. I commend our advocacy groups out there in this region that have really kicked us in the seat of our pants to get us moving in the right direction. It's important that we don't let up the pressure. We have an opportunity to right a 40-year wrong of denial of public access to all Californians to this sector of the coast. And we have an opportunity with the momentum, the thousands of members of the public that have written in to show their support for this effort. And we should not squander that pressure and that momentum and that timing. And we should move forward as expeditiously as possible to make this happen. My last statement, this is America and this is California. Yes, we have our rights, we have our property rights, but what we don't do in this country is we don't have private areas for that are set aside just for the elite to recreate. This coast belongs to everybody, and we commissioners and this agency fully intend to restore the right of the public to access this coast.
Thank you, Commissioner Vargas. Are there other members of the commission that would like to make comments or be recognized? Yes, Commissioner Baker.
I want to go from the soaring rhetoric, in which I wholly endorse, to saying that those of you who come from the ranch and who say we want to have the ranch included, I think you should find Sarah before you leave and make sure she has your contact information so that we can involve you in the process. Sarah, raise your hand so they know who you are. Because I think if you're going to fix this, you do need the branch owners involved. And I think if you all are willing to do that, we're willing to engage, and I would find Sarah.
Thank you, Commissioner Baker. I would just add, I think it's, I appreciate, we're fortunate in this country, with the recent political climate in this country, we may forget that, but we're very fortunate to resolve issues hopefully through dialogue and at the ballot box and not by other means that we see employed throughout the world. But we also have some values and some principles that we defend, and I think one that this agency in the state of California has purposely pursued is the fact that the coast belongs to everyone. And I find it disappointing and frankly absurd that we find ourselves in this situation with respect to such an incredible asset that belongs to the people of the state of California. I find it absurd and I find it disheartening, but I also echo the comments of our chair and other members that we're going to resolve this one way or another. It's taken a long time, but we are going to get where we need to be, and I hope everyone in this audience hears that loud and clear. Any other comments from members? Any other comments from staff, Mr. Ainsworth?
No.
All right, thank you very much for the report. Very well done. That'll bring us to South Central Coast.